From Bossier City, Louisiana, this is the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And welcome to episode number 6. And I'm here today with Matt. Say hi, Matt.
Hey, everybody.
And Jen.
Hey, guys.
And Jill.
Hello.
And we're here to discuss another topic this week. And I did not let everybody know last week what topic we were going to lead into, so my apologies on that. I didn't hear anyone complain on it either, just FYI. But what we're going to go with this week is finding that higher power and our experience with finding the higher power and how we came about it. And a lot of us, all of us, have been sober for several years. So obviously there's something to this higher power thing. It might have took a little bit. It might have took a lot. We don't know until we talk about it. So we're going to go around the table, starting with Jen. We're going to talk about finding that higher power. And feel free to chime in anytime you want to. Go ahead, Jen.
All right. So, yeah, I walked into the rooms, and like I said on previous episodes, the God thing, it was just a disconnect, right? I didn't have any spirituality. I didn't grow up in a spiritual household. So naturally, I walk in the room and I see all this God stuff on the wall, and I'm thinking, oh, crap, this ain't going to work for me. Of course, the God I was serving at the time was a big fat idiot because, I was playing God. So naturally, they tell me to pray, and even if you don't believe. And so I did. I prayed. I had no clue who I was praying to. None of that. My second sponsor took me through that activity where you write all on one side of the paper what you want in the God of your understanding, and on the other side of the paper what you don't want from the God of your understanding. And so I did that, and I did that exercise, and I handed it to her. She tore it in half, and she handed me the God that I did want.
Who was this? What sponsor?
This was Becky.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Becky. And that's who I prayed to for a little while.
How often did you pray?
Daily.
Okay.
Yeah.
One time, 3 times, 8 times? All day?
It wasn't that constant contact with God as I understood him, like it says in step 11. Not in the beginning.
Not at first, huh?
No, because I think once you start seeing evidence of God, I trusted God with little things in the beginning, or the God that I was praying to, and once I saw that he could take care of those little things, then I started turning over bigger things. And so for me, I went on, my spirituality was based solely on what I read in the big book when I finally started reading it, working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and the things that I heard in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's great because God speaks through people, and we are in a blessed situation where we get to talk about God daily. So it's not like you go to church and you get your, your Sunday morning feel, and then you go about your day. We get to go in the rooms, and we are evidence of God's miracles. And that's a great thing. It wasn't till year 3.5, right around the time that COVID, I call it BC, before COVID, during COVID, after COVID. I could just see things in the world that were just, I couldn't explain. But I had the minimal knowledge I knew about scripture. I could kind of put 2 and 2 together, like something's not right. And it just so happened that a really good friend of mine, Larry W., gave me a book.
No, Larry.
And he told me, read this book and do what it says. Read a chapter for 40 days. And in 40 days, that book did exactly what it was meant to do. And that was introduce me to my real higher power, and who is Jesus Christ. From there, the Holy Spirit kind of took it from there. And that is when my life did the the complete 360. That's when my life really began to change, because now I had a real power behind it. And that's just unique to me. I'm not saying that your higher power has to be Jesus Christ, if that's not. That was my experience, though. From that point, I fell in love with Scripture. I just wanted to, the big book references when we first get that into that spirituality thing, that's all we want to do. Our heads are in the clouds, and I wanted to know everything about Jesus that I could. So it started out small. I started, I went from, I thought it would take me a decade to read one gospel of the Bible, and I started reading it, and then I found out Scripture interprets Scripture. Then I found out, and I'm a picture person, so I would just watch movies about Christianity, movies about God, all of those things. And then I got real into the study of eschatology, and that is study of the end times. And I still study that daily. So
I'm glad you cleared that up. I didn't know what the heck that was.
Yeah.
It's the study of, the Bible. A third of the Bible is biblical prophecy, and it is.
So the end of the end.
So
let me ask you this: you didn't have. We talked about this a little bit, but I always want to ask you. So, you're growing up before you came into AA. What was the religious / spiritual thing in your life? Was there any introduction to it? Was there any regularity?
I was raised practicing Catholic. My grandmother, like I mentioned prior, is a devout Catholic. She is one that, if the church is open, she goes to Mass every day, as long as she's in good health. And, in college, I did go ahead and get confirmed in the Catholic religion, and that was actually for selfish reasons. The guy I was dating at the time was Catholic, and I just, it was the next progression. If we're going to get married, I got to be like Catholic or a legit Catholic. So I did those things. But I can remember even the many times, or not many times, that my parents would take me to church. I just remember being embarrassed, sitting on that pew. Everybody's getting up to get communion, and I have no clue what's going on. And I am not knocking the Catholic religion by any means, but I didn't understand any of the rituals. I didn't understand, I thought I could never memorize all, like, the Apostles' Creed and all of the things that you do when you go to a Catholic Mass. And
Creed.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And that's not religious.
I know.
But we both are.
Another band reference.
I like that. But they're kind of like a cross between mainstream and Christianity, actually.
Yeah.
Creed is.
I've heard that, and a lot of their lyrics are spiritual.
Yeah.
Spiritual in nature.
For me today, it's I'm non-denominational. I do a lot of the Church of the YouTube. I do go to the church building.
Well, I think the invent of the internet has also changed, the way a lot of people attend church across the world. Not me. It hasn't changed the way I attend church, but I think across the world, the invent of the internet has brought people that might not have gotten up on a Sunday morning to go to church into it.
That's what I love about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and what I have found, and through study of the big book and study of the big book, is it is not about works. It's not about going to church and sitting on a pew and I'm there every time the church door opens. It is about an actual relationship with the God of my understanding. And for me to have a relationship with that God, and this is just personal to me, I'm not saying this has to be for everyone, I have to study the Word, His Word, because they're one and the same.
Well, if you think about relationships in general, just a relationship between two people. It could be, as a kid, your best friend, that you hung around with all the time, or as an adult, that person of interest, or even a wife, husband, whatever it is. But there's always that personal relationship, and there's always something on the outside trying to get in. Always. Whether it's that best friend or that parent or whatever it is, you have this personal relationship, and you have to weather storms. You and whoever it is, and I'm not talking about anything romantic. I'm talking about just the relationship you have. And you have to weather storms through the course of your relationship, And obviously, I can't compare my relationship with another person as a relationship with God. Totally different. But, I have my best friend in the whole world's been my best friend since I was 4 years old. 46 years he has been my best friend. And still to this day, we don't talk to each other because that's the best way we get along. He has his life and I have mine, and we're grown men, and playing with Legos just don't do it anymore for us. We stopped that in our mid-20s, but we have the best relationship. But always somebody, those two, you put them together and they're like oil and vinegar or whatever. You know how people get. So that personal relationship with God, mine has also weathered. Somebody's always got an opinion, and it doesn't matter because it's my relationship with that higher power.
So can I just talk about? I'm in actually one of those. The big book talks about the trials and low spots, and I was reflecting this morning on. I am in what would a normal unspiritual person would think a pretty damn uncomfortable situation right now.
Yeah.
God has isolated me from a lot of things. I had to take a step back from bodybuilding for reasons out of my control. And I can either lean into God and learn and grow from it, or I can turn back to that old person. But that's eventually going to lead me back into fear. All my character defects are going to pop right the heck back up. And if I stay in that state for any amount of time, I run the risk of picking up that bottle again.
I'm going to have to 100% agree with you. I mean, I would, we all have those trials and low spots. And, the data set, to use words of one of my members down in Mandeville, the data set that I have provided for myself when I check back into it is anytime I return to my old behaviors, I'm going to return to my old actions. And my old actions were not cool. Matter of fact, I know that. I know where that leads. The God thing, I don't know where it leads. But it's never led bad.
That's good.
Well, yeah, it is good.
I mean, that's
God led bad, it wouldn't be good.
What you're saying is good. I mean, that's a good way to put that.
Yeah, I was talking to an old coworker the other day, and there's some things going on about at one of my previous places of employment, and we were just chatting about the situation, and she said something flat out. She's like, I wonder how these people that do not have God are dealing with this right now, because with God, something outside of myself, there's always hope.
Yeah. And a lot of them deal with it the way we did before we came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. They may not be alcoholics. That's just how they deal with it until they become an alcoholic.
So I found that and this took a long time to see this, but the low spots or the storms or whatever you want to call them, normally when that kind of stuff goes that way and we stick to what we're supposed to do and we still give God the credit and we pray and we do all those things that we're supposed to do, no matter the circumstances. When I've had big storms, like truly not just I had a bad day, but going through stuff, that's when the best stuff is fixing to happen every time.
See, yeah, I remember, I think it was year 4. I was in another one of those trials and low spots. It wasn't, a great period in my life. I think at 38, I had lived with my parents more as an adult than I'd cared to admit. And I just remember I sought God, and I kept doing that. And I love the way Coleman says it, not the next right thing, the next indicated thing. Because I don't know what's always right, but I do know I need to get up, go to work, go to a meeting, help other alcoholics. Those are indicated things, kind of keep a reasonable schedule and put my head to the plow and just get after it. And then all of this sudden, I stopped, gave up that illusion of control about how I thought life was supposed to be at that moment. And all of a sudden, when God moves, he moves fast. I mean, it was just one thing after another, after another. And now I look around and it's just like, I can't just, I can't say that there's not a God. There's so many things that, like, I'll read a meditation, then I'll pick up scripture, then I'll go to a meeting and somebody says something and it's like one conversation that God has had through me. And I think that's what I struggle with the most. It is not, hey God, I don't want to do your will. It is, what is your will for me? Because only to the point where I get in enough misery that I'm like, I don't care what it is. Just tell me, come here and sit on my, and it would be so easy sometimes if God would just sit down on my bed and say, hey, Jennifer, this is what we need to do today. This is my plan for you. This over here, yeah, that's not going to work. And, you can keep doing it. I'm not going to tell you to stop. But what I've also found too is eventually his will is going to play out. If I stick my big fat foot in it or hand in it, it's either going to delay my blessing or it's going to cause enough pain where it's going to divert me to whatever the path is that he intends for me to be on.
Yeah, till lesson learned, huh?
Well, I mean, think about this. I would say show of hands, but the listeners can't hear our hands. How many of us got to AA and found God?
Oh, I did.
Me?
I did.
For sure.
Okay, so there's 4. So we're 100%. How many of us came into AA on a winning streak?
I absolutely was not on a
No.
winning streak.
So I'm going to imagine that.
Correlation there.
Yeah, we have all came and found God when we were in a trial or low spot. We found him. We didn't want to go back to that trial or low spot, not that specific one anyway. And so we seeked him.
Yeah, pain's a great motivator.
Yes, it is. And now we just continue to seek him, and that relationship grows. It's kind of like a lot of folks find God in jail.
Yeah.
I love in the last sentence of we agnostic. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us, and it's kind of plagiarized from James, but
There it is. Right there, I'm looking at it. There it is.
I love that. Right, as long as I seek him, I'm gonna find him. He's gonna show up
And where is he?
everywhere.
Yeah.
But if I go back to just doing what Jennifer wants and, well, that's just a coincidence, I just don't include him in my daily activities, then I'm not going to find him because my head's up my rear.
And this is, my brother and I had this conversation. Very spiritual guy. He's big in his church. He's like an associate pastor. Like, he does all that stuff. My youngest brother.
Is that like the, what is that? Like a co-captain?
Like, kind of like just a backup preacher, I guess. I don't know what the term is.
The
Just
deacon?
Kind of, maybe.
You ever met the Deacon brothers? Like a whole bunch of people that are deacons.
Well, I grew up with a bunch of deacons. My dad was a preacher. We were always dealing with the deacons.
He's an understudy.
Is that what a deacon is?
Well,
I don't know.
Okay, I don't either.
No, I think it's like one under a pastor.
Maybe a deacon.
They're like an
deacons
elder.
are just like the bouncers of the church, basically.
Well, I
they
mean, it's
take
like
up the
one-
offering.
One night, every person I was working with that night was a deacon. And I felt left out because I wasn't a deacon.
Well, my brother was talking about hearing God's voice, right? And he's like, yeah, guys, I mean, he's, does his thing, and he's way more knowledgeable and spiritual than I'll ever be. And he's like, yeah, God will whisper to me. And I was like, you know how God talks to me? And he goes, how? And I said, have you ever seen The Grinch with Jim Carrey?
Yeah.
When he's up in the in his lair, and he's yelling up that hole, and it's repeating itself back down, and the voice screams, "You're an idiot." That's my voice. God says, "You're an idiot because you don't listen."
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do Matt things, and he has to get my attention. And Caleb said, I don't think God talks that way. And I said, you can let your God talk how he wants. I know how he talks to me, and sometimes he has to get my attention.
Yeah, I'm not real good at hearing his voice, and usually when it sounds like a loud blonde that something that I want or I want to do, I know it's for me and it's not him.
Right.
You know.
Jill, what about you?
What about me? I'm just kidding. We're talking about finding that higher power.
Finding it.
I just did it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
You just found your higher power right
Right.
there.
Right.
Power of this podcast right here, guys.
A booming voice.
Hallelujah.
A booming voice came down from somewhere. It sounded like mine.
No, I mean, like I didn't have a higher power outside of AA, and I found it in the rooms, and I mean it was a huge struggle for me because I'd never been taught to rely on anything else other than myself. Certain things were introduced to me, like I told you guys, like meditation and stuff, but I didn't do it. I mean, I didn't believe in it. I just tried it a couple times and that was it. But coming in and just, God, being as broken and I just so much hate and anger was inside of me. And I came in, and of course on the walls is the steps, and I'm like, there's a lot of God in this. There's also a lot of capital H's that say he. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. They want me to be a nun, and that's not what I came here for. And I don't know, it was really scary. I mean, it took many, many meetings with my counselor outside of the group, and just me crying because, like, I don't understand what any of this meant. No one told me what surrender meant. To me, I'm like, oh, yeah, I am waving the white flag. Like, I'm done. But how do you like give in to something you can't see, or how do you give something to something that's not there? And she's like, through prayer. And I was like, okay. It took a while for me to get behind that because I'm one of those people, I need to see to believe.
Results.
Yeah, I need results. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. And so she goes, you need to get into God's will instead of Jill's will. I was like, I just kind of laughed. I was like, but actually I didn't. I cried.
Yeah, I see.
I mean, I boo-hooed. I was like, I don't know what God's will is. Like, how do you know what that is? And
I had to Google it. Instead of working the steps, I Googled it. I turned to Google.
Pretty much said everything that you've been doing is Jill's will. And I was like, I mean, like, it made no sense to me. And she's like, everything you've been doing, not good. I was like, I don't get it. I mean, it took me a while to understand all this, but she said, start praying. And so I was like, okay. And that kind of freaked me out because for a while there, like my mentality at the time, which is so concrete and literal, I was like, if anybody else was doing this, just out in the open, this would be considered psychotic. I am talking to myself to the air. And I couldn't, it just felt weird. And so she was just like, just try it. And I did. The first thing I started, praying for was for my panic attacks to go away. I had them for about almost 20 years and was highly sedated on, sedatives. And they stripped me of those when I went to treatment. But I wasn't coming to treatment for that because I didn't have a problem with it. So anyway, I started praying about my panic attacks. I was like, I won't make it. I will not make it if I continue to have these. And like slowly, I don't know, they just poof disappeared.
Like one day you woke up and didn't have them, or was it over time?
I haven't had one in recovery, period.
Wow.
And
Stay away from them energy drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever trigger that or that to ever come back. And I mean, I'm seriously, like, I was a person that went and got my ears stapled because they said that could help with anxiety. I went to go get hypnotized by a hypnotist to try to get rid of them. And I remember telling my mom,
legit like a licensed hypnotist?
Oh yeah, he threw me into a panic attack on the count of 3, and I darted out of the office. I was like, this is some freaky stuff.
So did you have them prior to your using, or?
No, they were drug induced. They started when I was 19.
Imagine that you hadn't had, and I noticed that too. I used to have anxiety attacks all the time, and I stopped drinking.
Yeah, I had panic disorder, which put me in a couple of in mental institutions, and like I said, highly sedated on anything from Klonopin to Xanax to whatnot. And beer helped as well, but I didn't realize how that cycle of addiction just kept me in that panic attack. And they just didn't happen. I mean, I was freaked out because I knew like it was just right there at any time it could happen. And so I was like, okay, but I still was trying to rationalize it and say, well, this is just the body's physiological response to not having substances in it.
Yeah. Kind of like a seizure almost.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay. And then I just kept doing it. And of course, struggling because no one had ever really taught me how to pray. So here I am in treatment, and all of a sudden, even out of treatment, I think that, well, I guess I just need to pray for all the things I've ever wanted. I'm serious. It was a Christmas list. And guess what? I didn't get any of them. I was like, I'd love a husband and a house and this like 6-figure, salary. And, this would be great too. And like, none of it happened. And I started praying, like, maybe if I pray more, it will happen.
But it got you to start praying.
It did. But man, that screwed me up more than anything. My sponsor finally sat me down and was like, okay, you need to settle down. She goes, I want you to say, help me in the morning and thank you at night. And I was like, oh, okay, I can
What
manage
about for the
that.
Corvette? No, not that, Jill.
It was that for a while, but it was all selfish, and it probably was like that for a pretty long time because I didn't understand what it was for. I thought you prayed to get things. And that's just me being, clueless and not ever having like someone tell me like, or really know what I really wanted, because I was still in selfish Jill in early recovery, and I hadn't found like what my purpose was in life and all these other, beautiful things. It was wild. I would take it and I would run with it, and then I'd be like, you know what? This shit isn't happening in the time that I want, in the way that I want. Screw this, God, I'm out. And I'd get pissed, and I'd call my sponsor, and she was like, Jill, God. And so it took a lot of that going back and forth, and it took a long time for me to realize, like, it is, I can't make these things happen. There was a lot of my will, God's will, the tug of war, like I talk about, because I just didn't know where that line was, because it is kind of muddled right there between my will and God's will, because you need to do the footwork, but then where does that stop? And the next thing you know, I'm flying the plane or driving the car or whatever. But I'll tell you what happened. What really sealed the deal for me is that I went through the steps. Well, I know.
What?
And I did. It's crazy, huh?
What?
Well, this is the deal. I saw on step 12, as a result of these, you'll have a whatever
Spiritual experience.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. And so, I was like, okay, like they don't know me. How are they supposed to know I'm gonna have a spiritual awakening? And first of all, like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, it does sound kind of
Creepy.
I didn't know what a spiritual experience was. And so all of that sounded like, yeah, that's great. That will happen for everybody in this room, but it won't happen for me. And I knew it. I was still just quite the mess, crying at the 9th step promises. And I'm like, that's not going to work. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to do it. And then I'll just show you guys. So I did it. And this is with my my sponsor, Marla. And we actually went through it like slowly and went through it well. And I did that whole thing, a cluster. What are the attributes that you want of your higher power? And I wrote all this stuff down, and she goes, well, there it is. There's your higher power. I was like, oh, wow, it was that easy? Like, I thought I had to go like to church or, get saved or do something, in order to find these things. So, I was like, I can do that. And step 2 and step 3 were instrumental in my recovery, but still there was that
shadow of doubt.
Yes, actually that person that is over intellectualizing the whole entire thing and saying, well, with her concrete thinking and whatever. And so I continued to go through the steps, and I remember towards the end more. I might as well have had like a magnifying glass. Like I was looking for it. I was like, when is that spiritual awakening coming? I was looking everywhere. And I didn't know what I was going to see, like a
Burning
bush
Bright
or
light.
bright light.
Right.
A tunnel. No, I'm just kidding. So, and the thing is, like, I didn't see it coming at all. It's all of a sudden something just snaps and you're right up in the middle of it. And you're like, holy shit, it happened. And I remember that feeling. And I was so excited because, like, that stuff didn't happen to me. Are you serious? And not only that, how did those guys know that? How did Bill W. and what's his face know that? Sorry, I can't remember a lot of stuff. But
Bob
I mean,
Smith.
Yeah.
yeah, I knew it was something like that. But anyway, how did they know that? And that freaked me out. But I remember, this was so amazing to me because not only, did I have this spiritual awakening and wow, how crazy that was. It was a whole psychic change.
Oh, the big book talks about that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I had hope for the first time in my life. First time. And I was like, there could possibly be a way out of this. Like, I feel free. But the first thing, that I like to say is that I felt faith for the first time. And that was, like, I finally believed in something. And I knew that, like, it worked. So I remember when I was, like, 16, and this is just kind of going back to, how I used to think. My best friend and I were driving around, and I looked at her. She was talking about faith, and I was like, I don't understand what that word means. And I remember her telling me, and I was like, I still don't know what that means. But I know that when I went through the steps, I felt it. And it wasn't like I knew it. And throughout the years, I've gone through the steps multiple times, and it has gotten me closer to God every single time. Now, I did the steps the second time saying it's not going to happen again. That was just a one-time deal. And I'll be damned if it happened again. So, since then, I've been all aboard. And, I pray every day, do my medication. I do my medications.
Yeah.
God bless.
Religiously.
So anyway, I do all this stuff now because it worked and it continues to work. But also I had to work on me and, the way I thought about things because I was so selfish. And I realized big things like, this is not going to happen in my time, nor is it going to happen probably the way that I want it. But it's all going to happen the way it's supposed to because I just remember being so frustrated at things.
But us as addicts, we want everything right now.
Oh,
Instant
absolutely.
gratification.
Yeah, it's like,
obviously,
hey, I just prayed, man. Where's my $1 million that
Yeah.
I just asked about? It should be sitting beside me.
Taught me patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me just don't pray for patience.
No,
I
I
second
did
that.
that
You will
once.
get opportunities to
second
practice it.
It was literally the worst day of my life. I was like, not doing that again. Nope.
So let me ask you this, because this is all about new people that we hope are listening and want to, maybe something's on their mind. And this is I know dealing with other guys, they skip step 1 and they read step 2 and 3 immediately, and then they freak out before we ever get started. That's the majority of
Right.
them. So how long you come in and you start doing this time until you go, okay, this is better. Like, I see where this is going. I have hope. Like, where was that? Do you remember that length of time it took for you to get to a point? Not that everything was perfect or nothing like that, but just, okay, I see where I'm going here. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
God is good. What would you say?
That took a while.
It did me too. That's why I'm asking.
I can't remember. I know that around 60 days I started feeling okay physically. But spiritually, it I think it took 9 months.
That's exactly how long it took me.
Really?
9 months.
I left treatment feeling pretty good, and I remember going to the halfway house and being like, wow, wow, but, and I was feeling pretty good about things, but I mean, like my recovery, early recovery is a roller coaster that I'd never want to ride again.
I kind of rode that pink cloud to Rainbow Town when I first, Rainbows and Unicorns when I first got in. But for me, I think I had more faith. I don't think I know. I had more faith in the group. I had more faith in things I heard in the room. But, I wasn't accruing in the beginning more consequences until finally I got to the point where I was still running the show. I was still managing my own life. And I was still running it into the ground. And that got me to the point of circumstances made me willing to surrender.
Same thing here.
Because it wasn't just, oh yeah, I'm in AA. They told me to surrender. They told me to,
I'm done.
turn my will over to this sky fairy that I had just met 3 minutes ago. And here I am, like, I had never even heard the words God's will. I thought that was an AA term. And then I go out of the rooms and I start hearing God's will outside of the rooms. I'm like, oh, they stole that from AA. I mean, that's how clueless I was. And so rather than work the steps, I hear this God's will and I'm trying to figure out how. I'm thinking at step 3, I say that 3rd step prayer and I'm, supposed to have all these revelation knowledge about how my life's supposed to play out. Like what career I'm supposed to have, who I'm supposed to marry, all of the things.
All the answers right then.
It's step 3. And I had just met my higher power like 2 minutes prior. I mean, that's how delusional and clueless I was. And really, at that point, all I really needed to do, rather than turn to Google, which I did, I just needed to work the rest of the steps. And somewhere between step 3 and step 11, I would have had a better understanding, at least what God's will wasn't for me. You know what I mean? But I mean, I think that's just a newbie. I just didn't have a clue. But I kept coming back and I didn't drink in between meetings. And somewhere in there, the desire to quit drinking just disappeared. Yeah. Now, my Jenniferism still existed. I had a extreme case of Jenniferism. But, yeah.
So that's why I was asking you guys, because I think everybody thinks that I'll go in there and life is going to be gravy. Y'all go to treatment centers as well as I do. Everybody thinks I did 30 days in treatment. When I walk out, I should have on a new suit, shiny shoes. Everybody's happy to see me. I'm the greatest thing since
30 days in treatment.
Wrong. You made a huge mess of your life. You've made a huge mess inside. Forget everyone else and everything else that you've touched. But just your own issues, internal. It is a process. It's a process getting to that point that got you in the rehab, and it's going to be a process to get you out of that. And that's where the faith comes in, and the God and higher power, because you have to, you can't do it without, hey, somebody else has got control of this, and I'm going to trust that they're guiding it, because it's not working. I struggled so much.
It didn't happen overnight, for sure.
No, I was a lot of nights, a lot of overnights.
Lots of tears.
365 times 4. And I'm, 6.5 years sober? And I'm still a major work in progress. And I'm still playing that 2-step with God. I am all day long in God's will. It's like the hokey pokey for me.
But today you're aware of it.
But that is the thing. I recognize when I am in Jennifer's will, because I am restless, I'm irritable, I'm discontented, I'm a miserable, for lack of a better word, CUNT. Yeah. And that's, I pretty much know, because when I am disturbed, it's me.
And so that's why I was very curious about that with y'all, because I hear all kind of different things, and most people come in early and they get going real good for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and they're like, life's great. Well, life's still there. The stuff is still there. The program's for a reason. You do things in order for a reason, and you have to do 2 and 3 and fully do that and go, okay, I'm going to turn this stuff over. And for me, I was like you. I grew up in church, was there every time the door was open. I could have cared less about God or anything they were talking about in there because I was made to go every second it was open. Okay. I used to do all the, it didn't matter what they were doing. If they were re-shingling the roof at the church, I was there
I
with my
thought you were going
brothers.
to say deacon.
No, but I hung out with a lot of deacons as like 8-year-old.
He's
so
a future deacon.
future
Right.
deacon.
It's waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes-
Future deacons of America.
But that didn't, being around all that all the time doesn't give me a relationship with God at all.
Yeah, you,
You
can
know?
hang out in church all you want, bro.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And so, but I grew up and I hated it growing up. I was like, this is lame. It doesn't make any sense. I think the people are full of crap. And I had this thing in my mind about what it was. On top of that, I get to be a teenager and I start talking to my dad and I'm like, hey, did you go out when you were younger, and all I see is the dude up in the pulpit with a suit on and I'm like, what'd y'all do? I've never had a drop of alcohol and you don't need to either. And I'm like, you've never had a drop of alcohol in your life? No. And I'm like, then how can you tell me it's bad? That was my thinking.
Yeah, well, it makes sense.
And then I tasted alcohol and I went, he really don't know what he's talking about, So that was my whole mentality. And my parents were like, you don't touch anything. We don't do anything. You don't drink drugs, none of that. I did all that stuff, the more the merrier. I realized later why they were telling me just don't fool with it.
Right.
But I had to come to that for myself. And it was a long process to do it. I wish I'd have done it a lot earlier. But getting into a treatment center, and there was a tech in that treatment center, young guy. His name's Andrew. Not going to say his last name.
Do you know it?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was,
Shout out to Andrew.
Andrew, he's the man. So he had about 18 months when I was in there. And at night, I would sit in the little room, the couple of chairs in front of the thing, because I just didn't sleep good. And he was always reading his Bible. And so we would just sit there and talk. He was a good guy. And I was like, man, this ain't going to work when they let me out of here. Like I'm just pinging off the walls with my crap. And so we got to talking about prayer. That was one of the first things that we talked about. And he said, are you praying? I didn't have a sponsor. I was just in treatment. I didn't even know what AA was. And he said, but you need to pray, And he made me a little card with some stuff to pray. But he pulled out the Bible and he goes, I said, man, my dad, he can get up there and pray and it just sounds like Billy Graham or something, and it's all fancy. And he said, but it says right here, and he showed me that God just honors simple prayers. He just expects you to talk like you talk. He doesn't, you don't have to do all that. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that said that. I spent my whole life with Bibles in my hand. I didn't bother reading it,
Yeah.
and not to get off into religion and all that, but that was a turning point, talking with him night after night, just sitting there, to really kind of molding me to think a different way. And then I got out and I gave it over and I said, nothing else has worked. I think one of y'all said this earlier. I need to see results, but at the same time, my results are not good. And I was at the point where I didn't have anything to point to say, well, look what I've done. What I've done is a big garbage pile. So I had to have a little trust that something else was going to work, and it slowly increased. I came over here, didn't have a phone, didn't have anything. We moved here. I had kids to feed. I had a wife, no job. I'm sleeping on my brother's couch or spare bedroom. I go to the first lawn care place that I see in the phone book, okay, because I don't have a phone. And I drive over there, and I walk in, and the lady goes, and it's the fall. It's like September. They're closing down for the season. It was right here in Bossier. The guy, my brother was like, oh, you need to get a bunch together. I said, I'm going right there. Looks like a big one from their ad in the Yellow Pages, right? I roll. I walk in the door. I need a job. The lady goes, we're not hiring. I said, well, I need a job. The general manager comes walking by in front of me. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I need a job. He goes, it's the end of the season. I said, I know. And he goes, I'll talk to you for a minute, but we're not hiring, but come on back. He ended up hiring me. So I got a job. It was making more than I'd ever made in cutting grass, which wasn't saying much, but low man on the totem pole. And I had about 8 years of experience, and I just told him, give me a shot. Whatever you got, I don't care, sweeping the floors, whatever you got, I'll take it. He did. 30 days later, They walked outside. We were getting ready to go. I hated that job. There was so much drugs and alcohol running through those trucks, and here I am 90 days and just a mess anyway, and having to deal with that all day. And people, and 30 days later, they came out and they said, hey, we're going to promote you to a foreman on one of these trucks. And I said, okay. And it comes with a pay raise. 2 months after that, they promoted me to the chemical manager, same company. So in 4 months, the guy that was my boss left and went to another company. He called me. I go to work for him. Worked there 3 years. So in 5 years, by just concentrating on what I'm supposed to do, and this is just work, okay? This is nothing else but helping me get on my feet in life. I went from, in my business, sweeping the floor, and today I'm the operations manager at a national franchise, and I got about 35 guys in 5 years.
That's amazing.
In 5 years, begging for a job. And the guy, when I left, I went in and told him, I even called my sponsor, and I'm like, I hate this place. I'm tired of dealing with telling them to get drugs out of my face and all this all day. I was like, job. And he goes, you go in, you give him a 2-week notice, you do it, the whole deal. I go in, I give him a 2-week notice. I'm like, I hope he tells me I can just go. I was going to the next place. He goes, can you work the 2 weeks out? I was like, oh, but I did it. And when I left, he shook my hand and he said, anytime you ever need a job, you come back here. I'm always hiring. I said, okay. And to this day, that offer still stands. And God just kept seeing the things. It's like, I'm going to put the effort in. That's all I can do is my effort and my attitude. And God just went boom, 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 just knocking stuff down. And, man, I couldn't be more tickled. But it took a lot of storms to weather storms and go, where am I going in the storm? Because I think when you come out of that storm, that's you have to honor what you believe in those storms and stick to what you're doing, I guess if I've learned nothing else. But
I like how I think it's Elliot that says God will do 99% of the work, but we're responsible for that 1%, and 100% of that 1% we're responsible for. So.
Well, like y'all heard me say before, like you have those God moments where you just look up and smile because something's totally unexpected, and you're like, "There's no other way."
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was not looking for this.
I talked about a lot of God moments this weekend.
So I'm driving this old car. I'm just gonna brag on God, so I don't even care.
Go for it, bro.
Yeah.
I'm driving this old car, right? It has no doors. Y'all don't remember it. Probably Mike might. You might.
Like
but
it literally didn't have doors?
I mean, it didn't have windows. I'm sorry,
okay.
not doors. It didn't have no windows. Rain,
It was
sleet.
a bicycle.
I was like the U.S. mail.
He was
baby.
delusional. It was just a bicycle.
At this point, you were on a motorcycle.
Pretty much
Bicycle.
a 4-seater motorcycle.
Gotcha.
Yes, but that car had 500,000 miles on it. When I got out of treatment, my dad had that car, and he said, son, it probably ain't going to make it out of the driveway, but you can have it. And he said, as long as it'll run, it's yours. My dad prayed over that car when I went down to pick it up that morning. I drove that car for 1.5 years. Drove it to Jackson, Mississippi, multiple times. Drove it to Arkansas for 1.5 years. It cost me $10 to fill it up all week. I had no money. That car was great. It was ugly, but it was great. But I'm working for a company. I go over to this other company, and I'm working for them. And the owner calls me in, not my boss, but the owner one day. All I'm doing is working for them. I haven't asked them for anything. They're paying me what they said they would pay me. I'm doing the work. So I go in one day, and the owner says, I want to talk to you for a minute. And I said, okay. And he said, he had an F-150 that was a company truck. And he said, I'm going to sell you that truck out there. You're going to buy that truck from me. And I said, you're barking up the wrong tree because I don't have any money. So it's impossible to sell something to someone who has no money. And he said, no, you're going to buy it. And I said, I'm not. I don't know. We're $0. You have a truck. It's, I know you're a smart businessman. Pick this up. Pick up what I'm putting down here. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. And he said, I'm going to sell you the truck. What did he tell me? $2,000 or something, which was way under what it was worth. He said, I'm going to sell it to you for $2,000. I said, let's repeat. I know you're struggling today. No money.
Yeah.
I don't have $2, much less $2,000. He said, let me finish. He said, I'm going to take $100 a week out of your check until the truck's paid for.
So 20 weeks.
20 weeks. But he said, I'm going to write you a check separate for a truck allowance for $100 a week. And he said, when you get it paid off, I'm still going to keep giving you that $100 a week truck allowance.
That is a lot of math.
Yeah.
That is-
It's good
so
math.
I was leaning on the file cabinet.
God made a
listening,
mathematician
and I was-
out of you that
yeah,
day.
and I'm not a mathematician, but I went, you're coming out bad on this deal, Danny. You know, I was like, this is leaning my way here. And he goes, Matt, I'm going to give you the truck. And he goes, you need a truck.
You still have the truck?
Yeah,
Is that the
that's
truck?
the truck I drive now. And he said, but I couldn't give it to you. My bookkeeper won't let me give it to you. So I said, how can I give it to him? And he said, I can give you a truck allowance. So, and dude, I sat there and was I didn't know what to say. Like, what do you say? You know?
Thank you.
That's what I told him. And, so there's no other way of that, happening without what we're all talking about.
And you can get
here,
into some amazing stories like that people see in recovery if they stay long enough.
Right.
I think what this, just listening to you three and the higher power thing, and we talked about this before we started recording, but we hear in AA a lot of sponsees or sponsors talk about getting in relationships in that first year, and it was put to me one time whenever I talked to somebody about it who had about the same amount of recovery. I just never looked at it. It wasn't even a thing for me, but you had a lot of people approaching me, you people searching for an answer, whether it was something different from what their sponsor was telling them or, something different from the AA, not necessarily credo, but the AA norm, which is, don't get in a relationship in the first year. You hear that a lot, and it's, it's not in the big book. I'll just say that. If you disagree with that or agree with it, that is completely between you.
It's sort of in the 12 and 12, though.
Sort of, but the way it was put to me is all the growth that I just heard from you three, right? And the things that, leading into the relationship you have with your higher power today, right? Well, that could come to a complete stop if you get in a relationship too early, before that relationship with your higher power is established. So, not for, not against. No opinion whatsoever do I have. But I'm throwing that out there, because there may be some questions, as far as, because I can't imagine. I wanted to get a year so I could sponsor. That was what I was shooting for. To hell with the relationships. I needed to sponsor somebody. I was dying when I came to AA, not dying for anything other than to stay alive, keep breathing.
Yep.
And so, but we do hear that a lot, from elder statesmen all the way down to new people, whatever it is. I used to hear in treatment, we'll first start out with a plant. Well, somebody brought me a bamboo, and it was dead within like 3 weeks, and get a fish, and then a dog, or what.
I do keep tiny humans alive, but
I can't do that. I can't
Well,
keep
my
sea monkeys were probably my longest term.
All my relationships were pre-existing before treatment, so I had all that when I got out, and then went through the divorce 3.5 years into it. So
I heard the speaker, Matt. I don't think you heard him. I think you might have not gotten there yet whenever he spoke at that meeting on Saturday. But, he said something, and it dawned on me when he was talking. And, here I am searching for a higher power. I had a higher power when I walked in the rooms of AA. Had a period. Wasn't changing it. It didn't matter what anybody said. That was my higher power. And my sponsor just explained to me I needed to work on the relationship I had with my higher power. That's obviously where the trouble was there.
relationship sufficient to bring about recovery.
Yeah. And I didn't have that. I had the kind of, like Jill was talking about earlier, the asking. My problem was I would we call it the phenomenon of craving. When you drink and then you don't stop, but every time I sat down and drank, my plan was to drink one or two. And do you know what happened between that one or two?
Phenomenon
I just changed my mind.
yeah.
That's all. I just changed my mind. I'm only going to have two. Well, now I'm only going to have four. Now I'm only have them all. And I just changed my mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to I had the ability to have a psychic change, obviously. Right? That was there, you know. And I didn't understand the good kind of psychic change where I didn't change my mind when I said I wasn't going to drink today. And that's the relationship I needed, you know, with my higher power. When we get into step 2, I'll talk about that a little more. He had he talked about drugs. He talked about drugs. Ooh. You know, it's like what he said was, we tell people when they come into AA, be honest with yourself. Be honest with the group. You be honest with but don't talk about your drug problem.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not either for or against. I have no opinion, but some of the revelations that he threw out there were pretty phenomenal. I've never heard of them before, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I just basically, as far as having a relationship with a higher power, had one my whole life, had a personal relationship with a higher power. Like it was me and him. Always. Just me and God. Sometimes that was good enough, even as a kid. You know, sometimes it was just me and him in the bedroom, you know, especially when things were bad. But I got away from it whenever I started drinking. When I was 27 years old, I got away from that higher power completely. And I didn't understand how to get back. And I would continue to search for that for 11 years after I got, you know, actually I didn't search for that for 11. I searched for it for about 3, you know, but it came into the rooms of AA. And I had to put a halt on the seeking, the looking, the thinking, all of that when it came to a higher power. I just had to stop and just start talking to God. That's what I had to do. I'm overthinking everything these people are telling me. Man, there's so much going through my head. How about I just do what I used to do when I was a kid? Throw my backpack on the floor, get on my hands and knees, and just talk to them. And I have a relationship with a lot of people in AA and don't even know their last name. And I got that relationship by just sitting there and talking to them. That's it. Nothing else. And as the years go by, the relationship grows. It gets bigger. You know each other better. You're more comfortable around each other. You tell each other more stuff. You rely on each other when it comes to your recovery. And that's what I had to do with God. I had to start over. You know, all the ex-girlfriends, dead grandmas, and Lamborghinis that I ever wanted wasn't coming back fast enough for me. But I was dying, you know. So, and I still, to this day, it still grows. It still continues to grow. And I'd imagine as life changes, and it does, no matter what, it's still going to grow. I just know that I have days where all I need for God to do is get me through the day. I don't need to overthink anything. I just need him to get me through this day. I just got to make it through the day. And boy, immediately I start thinking about tomorrow morning when I say that. Oh, but I got to wake back up to it. Well, there's a slight chance I won't wake back up. And then I've wasted all that time worried about tomorrow morning.
Sometimes God in the whole day, here's all I hear. Close your mouth. Close your mouth. Don't say what you want to say right now. Close your mouth. It's not. And I go, but I'm going to get this out right now. Nope. Close your mouth. And I close my mouth and I walk off. And then I look back and I go, that was the right move. Maurice
always gets on to me when I say but, because you forget everything that you said just prior to that. But, yeah.
I think the
we don't like big butts, and we cannot lie.
We cannot lie.
Butts as in B-U-T.
Honest program.
Right. Well,
I think the consensus, though, if you are new and you're listening to this, is it's always a work in progress, you know. But I think I've lost the obsession to drink. I know I can get one real fast if I tried, you know, and I'm not going to try that. But is it a daily reprieve? Yes. But it's gotten a lot easier. The actual drinking part has gotten easier.
So was anybody else like, I was terrified of God. I had a lot of sleep, what are those, nightmares type things, where this is when I was using, obviously, this is before I had a relationship with God, but I literally thought I was dying and I was about to go to hell, like right at that moment. And I would have these night terrors and wake up like screaming bloody murder. And I did that for a period of years. Imagine this, like I haven't had that because I have a relationship with the God of my understanding, and I'm no longer, I fear him like in awe and reverence, but I'm not terrified of him anymore.
Well, let me tell you. Whenever I was a kid, a lot of parents will say, "Boy, I'm going to put the fear of God in you." Huh? Well, my mom really did.
Yeah.
She really did it. She achieved what a lot of parents try to achieve, because I was scared to death of God my entire life, man. I mean, even when I got into AA, I was scared to death of God. I mean, just absolutely terrified.
But like I grew up in a church, and even trying to get the relationship now with God, and I still had this picture going in of like, oh, dude, I'm going to be like Sunday morning, every Sunday, I'm going to have to be in a pew, and on Wednesday night, and I'm going to have to teach vacation Bible school or whatever, and make birdhouses or whatever, whatever.
I like
Noah's Ark.
Wear a clip-on tie, as a grown-ass man. That's scary,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen, but the tie thing alone would keep me out of there. But anyway, that couldn't be further today. And so when I see God doing things in the real world and in that room, and with guys that we work with, or even ladies that come in and you see them start to get better. And Jennifer has a lady that she's sponsoring that has a few days, and I saw her yesterday, and I was like, it's like a week, and she looks so much better.
Yeah, when I started sponsoring her, I heard her date wrong. And so the other day I was sitting out on the bench with her, and she's like, yeah, I'm like a week. And I'm like, wait, you only have a week. And this is off of outside favors, right? Or outside issues that she's coming off of. And I was like, that's amazing. And she, but she's willing, and she's doing the deal. Like, she's taking suggestions, and even the smallest thing, she'll call and be like, I'm this.
But to me, that's God reminding me. I know. And when I was sitting there looking at her last night in the meeting, and she was actually looking around a little bit and like making eye contact with people. Mm-hmm. And you could see her face had a little color in it, and you could just see her getting a little better. And I told her after, I said, you're getting better. I can do. And she goes, yeah, I do feel better. And I said, just keep going. So
that's why one of my favorite things, and this used to be, that when we talked about the first coming in, or the first few meetings, or the first whatever in recovery, like the most exciting days did anybody else, like, you dress up a little bit more on the day you knew you were going to get a chip, like, and it was like so exciting every month to pick up the chip. And I love to see newcomers getting those 60, 90, the
I got one getting 90 day today.
Those chips, because those are the ones that you just don't know. The best case scenario is they get the sponsor, and they get through the steps, and they get that spiritual solution, and they're submersed in the solution. But we don't do it like Bill and Bob did in the first 100. We kind of coast into the step work. And so those folks that are in that small, those earlier months, it does me proud to see them and come back. And then you're in a meeting one day, and you're like, how the hell did you get a year? I felt like just yesterday you were picking up a Desire chip.
Most of the time I feel like I have about 10 months every day. I'm just like, I'm really about 10 months. That's where I roll.
I see people pick up chips that 9 years, and I'm thinking, how the hell do you have 9 years? I remember the day you walked in.
This was bad, and I'll tell a funny one, and he's my buddy too, so he wouldn't mind me telling this. But the guy in here that had been in here a while, right, younger guy, had some family issues, so he's out of the house, and pretty new in the program, but been around a while, And one night, my brother had tickets to the MMA fights at Sam's Town. We had a table, and this guy didn't have nothing going on, right? And we have the same sponsor, so I kind of knew from him being my buddy and all that he's kind of nothing going on. So I had an extra ticket. And we're walking out of the 5:30 meeting, and I just looked at him. I was like, hey, man, you want to go to the fights tonight? And he goes, what fights? And I'm like, down here at Sam's Town. I'm thinking in my head, the dude's got like 10 months, not 11 months. I didn't really ask. So he's like, heck yeah. So we bounce. We go straight. It starts at 7. We roll in. Well, of course, my family, I love them, but they like to party. Okay, and that's a party in there. No big deal. I'm around it all the time, but maybe not the environment for someone in very early sobriety. So as we're sitting at the table, I kind of turn to him, and we both get a bottle of water. We're hanging out. And I was like, how long have you got now, man? You've been coming in here a while. And he goes, oh, I get 30 days tomorrow. And I'm like, huh? And he goes, yeah, I got 30 days tomorrow. And I was like, dude, you've been coming in here like 2 years. And then I felt like, immediately when I said it, I felt like a jerk. And I was like, he goes, yeah, no, I haven't drank in about 18 months. And I was like, okay. And he goes, yeah, but man, I did psychedelics for a long time. Yeah. And I was like, oh. And he goes, and I was on the marijuana maintenance program. Yeah. And I said, what is that exactly? And he goes, I just made that up, dude. I was buying weed off the street.
That's California sober.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay. And he goes, I just feel like I'm 30
just
days
lost
off
all our
everything.
California listeners.
And I was like, man, I didn't mean to bring you in here, you know, like I would not have done that, but it's still funny. Me and him still laugh about it. So anyway, but,
good discussion.
That's just a term and I apologize. That's just a term that I saw on Instagram.
I'm sure those folks out in California understand. Cheech, Chong, the whole gang, they get it.
There's a song about it called California Sober. So
is there?
Willie Nelson and Billy Strings.
Enough said.
There you go.
All right, we've had a good discussion. I think the next time that we get together, we're going to discuss step 2. I think this is a good lead into step 2, which is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I'm going to leave us with a little tidbit that, in the big book, do y'all know where step 2 is in the big book?
In the big book.
Where you think it is?
Somewhere.
It's in We Agnostics.
That's what I'm saying. Somewhere in We Agnostics.
But we're going to talk a little bit next week on this one word. And it's, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? And we're going to talk about the or. The or is what we're going to talk about in that step. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank y'all for being here. For all the listeners out there, thank you. And I'm signing out. This is Mike, Grouch in the Brainstorm.